Hi, welcome back. And now we're going to begin chapter 3, titled The One and the Many. After 6 months of investigating this newly discovered, unchanging, and eternal half of my existence, I journaled the following. So this is journal entry December 1st, 2001. Yesterday, I slipped into a peculiar state of awareness while meditating. I found myself in a state of deep inner silence, and I recognized the stillness as my basic state. The very recognition of this stillness caused a stir in the silence, making me aware of the movement of my mind. In a flash, I saw the whole thing and I understood it perfectly. I even played with it for a while and committed it to memory. In this meditation, I was complete stillness itself, and as soon as I was aware of it being blissful, I realized that I had entered the arena of movement. In this state of movement, I was aware of the bliss that I was in just a moment ago, but it felt like a whole other world. I entered back into stillness and was once again in the realm of bliss. I continued to oscillate back and forth, realizing that the two states are like two sides of the same coin. Movement cannot fathom stillness, as the very act of moving, thinking, grasping, etc., it disrupts the stillness. So in short, the mind can never know truth or the infinite. The very presence of the mind negates the truth. What I saw seemed to be a symbol for who we really are in the whole situation of our existence. I had been obsessed with something very similar for a while now, and this was just a variation on the same theme. I saw that we exist in two modes simultaneously, still and moving. When we get the philosophical bug, we pursue the truth, but we find it to be elusive and paradoxical. Well, that's because we relate to ourselves as the moving entity and not the silent/still entity. The moving entity is the mind in action or thinking. Think about how silly it is for movement to try and understand stillness. It's a blatant contradiction. This actually happened to me in a meditation a couple days ago, and these experiences are bleeding together, which make it even stranger. And later I continued, it seems that no one can know the truth. One can only be the truth. But in order to be the truth, the person who seeks the truth needs to die. In fact, it is only the seeker that obscures the salt. So, it is the person that wants the truth, but the very nature of the truth itself necessarily kills the person who sought it in the first place. This is true because of the very fact that it is our personhood or our sense of personal identity that makes the search seemingly necessary in the first place. Let me try to simplify it. The other night, I was contemplating a pendulum as a symbol for reality or God. Let's say that God is a pendulum, and the nature of a pendulum is to oscillate between movement and stillness. The pendulum swings back and forth, but as it peaks to one side, there is a moment, however brief, in which it is perfectly still, before it swings back to the other direction. It doesn't matter how long a clock would measure the moment of stillness, because stillness is infinite in nature. Actually, we couldn't even measure the moment of stillness even if we tried, because it would be imperceptible to us as entities in time. Okay, so when the pendulum, or God, is still, it is the unmanifest, infinite. And when the pendulum is moving, it is the manifest, the finite. So you can imagine how ludicrous it would be for the moving pendulum, which is me, you, to try to know or comprehend the stillness. That is our situation. We are the moving pendulum looking for the still pendulum, but we can't recognize it because of the very fact that we won't stop moving. The only way for movement to be aware of the stillness would be to stop. But stopping is the death of the moving. So the mover will never see the stillness. This reminds me of my first taste of this at the Monroe Institute. I realized that no one could get enlightenment because there was no one actually there to be enlightened. Instead, there's only enlightenment, which is the end of all separation. So, once again, taking ourselves to be part of the world, we can never approach the truth without facing certain annihilation. Contrary to being gloomy, this is very liberating. The truth is that we have always been liberated, as there has never been any bondage to begin with. We are already complete and self-perfected. Just doing damn good jobs at pretending otherwise. Like actors in a play who are so good that they have taken their roles to be real. Isn't that what makes a good actor? And we are all very good actors. At this point in my journey, I was journaling regularly on my computer. So I will rely mostly on these journals to tell the rest of the story. So I continue with a journal entry, February 2nd, 2002. It's just past 3 a.m. and I feel compelled to write in my journal. I had just finished a very nice meditation, and afterwards I knew the connection was back. I was back. I had been increasingly establishing a deeper connection for some time now, but this one feels very permanent. It feels like this connection is my new baseline. I have been encouraging myself to keep a better journal and to try to capture in words what I've never attempted before. It is perfect timing too. Because another wave is just beginning, and this time I will be sure to express the whole thing from the very beginning, which is now. I have been so drawn to stillness lately. It's like the everyday world just lies above the sea of stillness. We can sink into this infinite ocean of loving divinity at any time, but our addiction to the movement keeps us on the surface, unaware of that which is waiting for us. If only we were to relax into what is. When you do sink into this space, it is so familiar and so much like home that you are no longer concerned with staying there, because you know that you are always there, whether you're aware of it or not. But lately I've been getting the feeling that something more permanent is coming. I feel like one of these meditations is going to get so deep that I'll make a crossover from which I can never return. Perhaps what I'm experiencing is the ego's fear of its own demise. Sometimes I see no point in ever thinking again. No point of ever coming out of that stillness. I have lived in that mode before, from time to time, but what I am anticipating now is a radical and permanent break for my egoistic mind. Next, we continue with journal entry February 15th, 2002. I have been experiencing a certain peace and easiness that I really can't put into words. It is a sense of supreme contentment that is anywhere from front and center to looming in the background, but it never disappears. I have been attracted to silence more than anything else. I find myself not attracted to the usual distractions of life. Instead, just preferring to rest in contemplation or an inward probing of pure awareness. I find myself wanting to spend more and more time just attending to my most basic state, and then just pressing or leaning into that source. I discovered a new meditation for myself last night. I saw that what I had been identifying with as myself was merely a tension that breaks up when inspected directly. I was reminded of my previous discovery of the same thing months ago, but this time it was different. After I recognized that tension, I saw that everything that I was aware of were merely objects. The tensions, the thoughts, the feelings, everything in my mind were just objects. And I decided that I was not interested in any objects. I wanted to know the subject. I wanted to probe that which was aware of those objects. So I let them all go and just remained as the subject. I felt like the subject was just behind where I usually find myself, and I felt like just leaning in that direction until the wall gave way under the weight of my probing. This will be my new practice. Journal entry February 25th, 2002. A very awesome and profoundly simple practice that I called backing up came to me while on the treadmill. So this is something that you could verify for yourself. I write, first, I simply noticed the world and that it was outside of me or directly in front of me. I realized that no matter what, I was always oriented just behind whatever it was that I was observing. Then I noticed that I was not only behind the world that I was observing, but that I was behind my body as well. I could actually observe the body just as I observe the world. So first there's the body, then there's the world. If you do this, then you're practicing backing up. And that is all there is to it. Now notice your thoughts and continue to back up so that you are observing your thoughts as much as you observe your body. So now you got your thoughts, your body, then the world. Now notice the sense of, I am doing this practice of backing up, and just observe that even the sense of I am is in front of you, which is observed, then the thoughts, then the body, then the world. You just keep backing up to notice all these, anything that takes place is taking place in you. You're the space for it. Now notice the sense, I already said that. Now notice that whatever exists, it exists in you, as you are merely the space or the capacity and nothing more. Keep doing this with all the subtle movements until even being dissolves in you as space. The result should be profoundly interesting, to say the least. After practicing this on a regular basis, you should be able to get home instantly at any time of the day in any situation by simply intending to back up, to notice that you are in front of you, your thoughts are in front of you, the sense of I am is in front of you, the world's in front of you. You back up and notice every dynamic is in you. Journal entry, March 3rd, 2002. I had a beautiful experience not too long ago where I was just lying in bed, probably just contemplating being or something along those lines, when I suddenly became curious about what my basic experience was. I can't explain it, but it was so innocent and so sincere that without even thinking about anything specific, any specific teaching, I just naturally and quite abruptly looked for my basic experience. I didn't think about it or say, okay, let's probe. I just got the curiosity bug, and without hesitation, I just stopped and looked for my most fundamental nature of being, and blammo! Next thing I know, it was like I'm sinking away from the noise that I had just thought to be me, and I could see it. The next frame in my mind is just being. I feel that I could describe it. It had a definite flavor or familiar feeling to it. When I try to describe it to my wife, I find myself using a cigarette lighter to describe the experience. Whoosh, the whooshing. It was like a constant whooshing that the lighter makes after you ignite it. The constant whooshing is always there, and that whooshing is what awareness itself is, but it always goes undetected by the moving mind because of its still and eternal quality. I see where I was going with this. Basically, being is always present, but whether or not I am aware of this fact depends completely on where I place my attention. If I am only paying attention to movement and noise, then I don't see what is always present. But if I'm paying attention to my most basic and fundamental nature, the stillness, the silence, then I recognize my being, which is eternally present. At times, I've described this experience as finding myself floating on the surface of a rocky ocean, full of activity, and then descending under the surface of the water where it becomes increasingly still the deeper I go. Ultimately, there is no movement whatsoever. Water is always water, whether it manifests as bubbling, frenetic, boiling water or deep, frozen, still water. In a similar way, awareness is always awareness, whether it manifests as a limited sense of self, individual self, or an unlimited sense of eternal self. Perhaps the most important realization that I drew from this experience was the discovery that the still aspect of our nature and the moving aspect of our nature, of ourselves, are occurring simultaneously. The implication being that heaven, nirvana, or any other description of an ultimate reality is not some future event that we will be magically transported to after this earthly life, but rather right here and right now. But it's only obscured by the movement of our minds. This was a radical discovery because it revealed a completely new baseline for my reality. Consider this. When we dream every night, we mistakenly take our landscape and our dream bodies as real, or rather a fixed and permanent reality. The only reason that we don't consider dreams to be real when we wake up is because the perspective of being awake provides a sense of a continuing baseline experience. We consider our waking reality to be our baseline reality only because our waking reality is continuous compared to our dreams, which vanish upon waking. What I discovered was that what we consider to be our baseline experience, this apparent waking life, is not our true baseline. Even this waking reality just comes and goes, just like our dream realities. Our true baseline can only be the stillness itself, the unchanging, the eternal awareness that is always taking place, whether we are aware of it or not. What exposes stillness as our true baseline experience is its eternal quality and the sense of familiarity. In my experience, I saw that my basic and fundamental nature was this eternal state of being. This familiarity stood out. The state will always be there, just the same as when we awake from a dream. After my experience, I was convinced that all there is God / awareness. And it exists in two modes. One as stillness, or the unmanifest, the eternal, the unchanging, the undifferentiated, etc. And two as the manifest, the measurable, the impermanent, the moving, etc. This realization distilled all my previous questions into one final question that I would torture myself over for the next few months. The final question for me was, how does the one manifest itself as the many? Typically, the big question is, how was the universe created? The challenge is that it is almost invariably asked from a position of our perceived dualistic nature. For the most part, we see ourselves as distinct individuals, living in a world that is separate from us, separate from God or the ultimate reality. But this dualism is only one perspective, and in my experience, limited and quite insufficient. Another perspective, one that has remained obscure until very recently, is the non-dual perspective. This point of view holds that there is not two of anything. There is no separate individual you and a world and a God that created you and that world. From this non-dual perspective, there is only God, and God appears as you and the world. The trick of all this is that when you and the world appear, God disappears. And when God appears, you and the world disappear. Having seen this for myself through my meditation practice, the question loomed ever large for me. If the one manifests as the many, how exactly does it do it? How does the one manifest as the many? Specifically, just what is the mechanism that makes the whole universe appear at all? If there is truly only one, then how the heck does two appear? I didn't have to look any further than my basic black and white diagram to find the answer to this conundrum. I remembered when I first drew the diagram, I was struck by the realization that all I really had to do to create the diagram was simply draw a line. The circle part of the diagram is not even necessary. The reason I drew the circle in the first place was to create a space in which I could draw the line through. But it is the line that is important. That subtle distinction. It is the line that is important because it is the line that brings about the only differentiation necessary to create a contrast. In order for there to be an appearance of two, you need contrast. That line is just the one differentiation you need, necessary to create this contrast. Okay, so now that I knew that what was necessary for two to appear was a simple contrast, I realized that any differentiation at all in the one would be the only thing it would take for the one to manifest as many. So what could that one differentiation be? Well, I thought about what the one actually represents and what it might be. I was satisfied that the one thing that does exist is awareness. If everything truly is one, then that one thing can only be awareness, because that is the only common denominator with any experience. It's awareness. Anything that has ever been experienced has depended on awareness for its existence. Awareness is always the second half of any object's existence. Even modern science, specifically quantum physics, recognizes that it is impossible to observe an object without affecting it. And it is only awareness that makes an observer in the first place. So verify for yourself. Think of an apple. Now try to think of the same apple without using any awareness. Can you have the apple without awareness? Turn the thought around. Think of awareness without an apple. Does awareness exist without an apple? If awareness is dependent upon the apple, or is awareness dependent upon the apple for existence? No. But the apple depends upon the awareness for existence. Awareness is timeless, immeasurable, and therefore not subject to causation. Everything that exists, everything that has existed, and everything that can ever exist or will ever exist is necessarily measurable or finite and is dependent on some other cause for its existence. It is only awareness that is immeasurable or infinite and therefore not dependent on anything else for its existence. Literally, everything in existence has a source except for awareness. Awareness is the supreme source of everything because it is the very ground of being. Awareness is at one and the same time the space we exist in, the life that animates us, and the love that we experience. So I narrowed the question down even further to, if awareness is all there is, then what is awareness aware of? Since there is nothing else except for awareness. What is the initial differentiation in awareness that brings about something to be aware of in the first place? I had often read about mystics who used a mirror as a metaphor for awareness, because a mirror is a clear and empty space for objects to appear in. The appearance of objects come and go within the space of the mirror, but the mirror itself always remains untouched, unaffected. What use would a mirror be if it was continuously altered by the objects that appear in it? The result would be a terrible mirror, but awareness is perfect. So back to my diagram. It dawned on me that all one would have to do is simply bend or fold the mirror to create the line in the middle. That crease or line would be the one differentiation necessary to provide that all-important contrast, the appearance of two. With a bent mirror, I now had a mirror facing itself, thus creating the appearance of two objects, when there's actually one. I had a model that explained the one appearing as many. As you might expect, this led me to another question. What would cause the mirror to bend in the first place? For my analogy to make any sense, it must be inherent in the mirror's nature to bend. It must be inevitable. Since the mirror represents awareness, the question is, what is it about the nature of awareness that would cause awareness to bend or fold into itself to create the appearance of multiplicity? The answer is actually quite simple. Consider the very nature of awareness. The very essence of awareness is that it is naturally and intrinsically aware. Since there is nothing else to be aware of, awareness naturally and spontaneously has no other option but to become aware of itself. So by virtue of the fact that awareness is all there is, awareness automatically becomes aware of itself by the sheer power of attraction to itself. It has an almost overwhelming impulse to do what it does, which is to be aware. It is this very power of attraction to itself that is enough to create the first fold in the mirror within itself, thereby creating the dynamic where awareness is facing itself as modeled by the bent mirror. The design that this fold creates makes the one appear as two. The mirror folded in half provides the mirror with something to reflect. In a similar way, awareness, folded in on itself via the power of attraction, provides awareness with something to be aware of, itself. So now we have awareness of awareness. The one appearing as two. The appearance of two, or duality, is what we have come to know as our world, or the universe. Since the appearance of our world is actually just a product of folded awareness, this world naturally takes on the qualities of said awareness. In other words, whatever can be said of awareness can also be said of the world. As above, so below. Since they are one and the same, perhaps this is what they meant by the ancient expression, as above, so below. The most obvious quality of awareness is the quality of being aware. On the face of it, it sounds ridiculous to suggest that the world is aware, or that everything in it is aware. After all, most of the world is dirt, rock, water, plant life, and other such stuff that is clearly not animate or awake. However, the awareness that I am talking about is a continuum that ranges in its intensity. At one end of the spectrum of awareness, you have the state of sleep or unconscious awareness. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the waking state or conscious or active awareness. Between the two ends exists dreaming and all the other semi-conscious states of awareness. So in terms of rocks and dirt being aware or possessing awareness, they represent the sleeping state of awareness. As the Sufis say, God sleeps as the rocks, stirs as the animals, and wakes as the human. The other quality of awareness that is reflected in this world is the quality of being eternal or infinite. Again, I realize how ridiculous it may sound to suggest that this world is without beginning or end, especially since the mystics place so much emphasis on this world being impermanent and fleeting. But the more we examine this world, the more obvious it becomes that we can never come to an ending at either extreme of the physical spectrum. When the scientists point their telescopes to the sky, space is found to be expanding in such a way that it is impossible to reach the end. Much like the horizon, the elusive end of space recedes exactly as quickly as you approach it. Even if you could imagine a boundary that is the end of outer space, the question becomes, how wide is that boundary? And what is on the other side of that boundary? And those questions obliterate any notion of a true end to outer space. Likewise, when scientists look through their microscopes to find the smallest things that can be measured, they only find infinity. Every time scientists think that they have discovered the smallest unit of measurement, they discover that the unit is actually just an aggregate of even smaller units. For a long time, it was written in college science textbooks that scientists knew that the atom was the smallest unit of matter. It turned out it just isn't true. However, they believed it was true until they discovered that even these atoms were units, or just aggregates, or even smaller units. At this point, it seems that science is realizing that it can never find an indivisible unit of measurement that defines an end to just how small things could get. In a similar way, the large has no boundary either. So verify for yourself. Consider this. How many times can you divide an inch? The fact that any unit of measurement is infinitely divisible has profound implications when it comes to the true nature of your world. What it implies is that infinity exists between any 2 points and all 2 points. You can have 2 points that are only millimeters away from each other, but you can divide that millimeters distance between the 2 points infinitely, since there is no smallest unit of measurement. The bottom line is that not only is the world endless in terms of its breadth, but it's also endless between any 2 points, no matter how insanely close to touching each other these 2 points may seem to be. Another example of the world mirroring qualities of awareness is the power of attraction. The power of attraction that creates the original fold in awareness is the same intrinsic power of attraction that is responsible for the creation of all of life, that exists within the very world that was created by the original fold. Whether we are talking about the binding of cells, a plant reaching for the sun, a dog in heat, or gravity itself, we are simply witnessing examples of the intrinsic power of attraction. It is the power of attraction that not only created our world, but sustains it as well. From late winter through early summer months of 2002, I spent countless hours contemplating all of this as a metaphor for what I called the great design of reality. The more I contemplated the relationship between the one and the many, the more I became obsessed with this idea of the fold. Taking it further, the more I thought about the fold, the more I became aware of how relevant the concept of the trinity is in terms of explaining the relationship between God, mind, or God and man, or mind and matter, heaven and earth, etc. The concept of the Trinity, or triunity, is found in all major religions. The Christians have the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost to describe the three aspects of the one God. The pagans have Mother, Maiden, and Crone to describe the three aspects of the goddess. The Hindus have Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. Vedantists have Sat, Chit and Ananda. The Taoists have the three pure ones. The Jews have the three in one notion of God. And the Buddhists have the Trikaya. When you compare all the examples of the Trinity and what each aspect of the particular triune represents, a pattern arises. All examples of the triunity seem to consist of three specific aspects of God: what God is, the base; what God does, the path; and what God produces, the fruit. Here is a comparison of three of the most recognizable examples of the triunity. And I name the Hindu triune. Their base, path, and fruit is the creator, the sustainer, and the transformer. Vedanta has their base, path, and fruit as existence, consciousness, and bliss. In Christian, the base, the path, and the fruit they have for Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. I've always been curious about the relationship between Jesus and God. My question to Christians has always been, why not just surrender directly to God? The answer I was usually given is that Jesus is God, because they are one as a triune. While the implications of that should have blown me away, I was left only dumbfounded and confused. But now that I have come to understand the concept of the Trinity for myself, I see the profundity in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost as all being one God. The Father is described as being the creator. This is the base of the Trinity. The Son, or Jesus, is always described as the way, or the path of salvation. This is the path of the Trinity. And the Holy Ghost is always described as an experience, the direct result of being saved. This would be the fruit of the Trinity. The fact that the concept of the Trinity is often dismissed as a mystery in our culture is certainly understandable, considering its very subtle and elusive nature. But I suspect that it may be the key to understanding the mystery of our creation. Once again, I come back to my basic black and white diagram. And I notice that in itself, it already contains a perfect description of the concept of the Trinity. At first glance, the diagram indicates two things: the black bottom half and the white top half. The black half represents the subject, or the unmanifest, and the white half represents the object, or the manifest. After spending considerable time contemplating the fold in the center of the circle, creating the dynamic of awareness, being aware of itself, it dawned on me that our whole perspective of being the subject experiencing the object is just an illusion caused by that folding of awareness. Now, taking the Trinity into consideration, let's look at the diagram again, but this time, instead of the usual circle with the black and white I usually use, now let's imagine a round leaf as our symbol for reality, or God. The leaf itself represents the first aspect of the Trinity. So this is just the leaf itself. This represents the first aspect of the Trinity, which is just the base. This is what it is. The slight bending or folding of the leaf represents the second aspect of the Trinity, the path. So now we have the center, the folding of the leaf. So here we have the leaf. There's the leaf, that's the base. The path is the folding of the leaf. That's what it does. That's what the leaf does. And finally, the bended leaf, resulting in half of it being obscured by its own shadow, therefore, or thereby creating the appearance of two, where there is truly only one. That would be the third aspect of the Trinity, the fruit, what it becomes. In other words, creation is the one appearing as the many. So basically, what I'm saying is there, you have the base, what it is, the path, what it does, it folds, and then the fruit, you have the resultant appearance of two. The appearance of two. It seems like there's two things, subject and object, but in reality, there's just one. And the two is caused by the folding, the power of attraction. So here you have just awareness. Awareness, when it is attracted to itself, that folding causes it to become aware of itself, and that attraction to itself causes the appearance of two, which is the world that we know. So this is what I was saying earlier would be God, just pure awareness, not even aware of itself. And two, there's the sense of you and a world, but they're the same thing, God or you and the world. It depends on whether that fold is there, that power of attraction creating the sense that there's two, when in reality, it's just one leaf. Just the bend is causing the appearance of two, but it's not two, it's just one. It's all this is, it's all just one. Appearing is two, appearing is infinite. It was also obvious now, and the implications were staggering. Prior to this, I had been focused only on the one aspect of the 360-degree experience. I was the subject, the bottom half of the circle, experiencing objects, the top half of the circle. But now it was becoming all too apparent that this was all an illusion caused by this folding process. The illusion is caused by the one simply folding itself and thus giving the appearance of two. It is the fold that creates the whole illusion of subject and object, the very basis of the dualistic perspective. Without that fold in the center, there would be no sense of a you and a world. In actuality, there's only the leaf, or awareness. This awareness is what is actual. The slight folding of the awareness, or the leaf, creates the illusion of two, the shadowed half being the world, or the object, and the unshadowed half being you, or the subject. What is actual and real is that only the leaf exists, or only awareness exists. Our very idea of being an individual subject experiencing an external world is nothing more than a byproduct of this basic illusion. Or perhaps better put, it is the grand illusion. The grand illusion is that there truly is only the one. But when the one folds itself, it automatically disappears, leaving the appearance of two. Much like the movie screen disappears when the images appear in it. The fleeting images on the screen may obscure the screen itself, but ultimately it is only the screen that is real. It is only the screen that is only unchanging. It is only the screen that is eternal. The fleeting images come and go. You got to get to know that real part, the unchanging part, the still part, the impermanent part. It's the only part that stays. All the rest comes and goes. In summation, here's how all this relates to the Trinity in terms of describing the relationship between God and man in the world. The relationship between God and man is identical to the relationship between white light and a rainbow. Just like God, the light is real and actual, and just like the rainbow, we only appear to be real. The light represents the first aspect of the Trinity, the base, what it is. The bending or folding of the light is the second aspect of the Trinity, the path, what it does. The rainbow is the third aspect of the Trinity, the fruit, what it becomes. Just as the bending of the light creates the appearance of the rainbow, the bending or folding of awareness, or God, creates the appearance of a you and a world. When the rainbow appears, it obscures the pure white light. When you and the world appear, God disappears. Taking the triunistic nature of the rainbow into consideration, it's easy to understand why all the major religions describe the same relationship between God and man and the world. Each of the three, God, man, and the world, are unique aspects of the only reality that exists, and that reality is awareness. Christianity's offering of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost seems to reflect the mysterious relationship between God, man, and the world very neatly. The Father represents the God, or undifferentiated awareness, which is the supreme source, the eternal creator. The Son represents man, or individuated awareness, which obviously extends to all sentient beings. The Holy Ghost represents the result of individualization, which is awareness appearing as another, or what we refer to as the world, the illusory world, like a ghost. This makes perfect sense when you consider the words that other major religions use to describe the world, such as Maya, mirage, samsara, illusory, etc., which is to suggest that the world is ethereal, like a ghost. Since the world is recognized as being an aspect of God, much like the rainbow is actually white light, the world, or the ghost, is therefore recognized as actually being divine, or as Christians put it, a Holy Ghost. All right, thank you very much. That concludes chapter 3. Oh, no, it doesn't. I got more. A page snuck in there. All right. So let's go back to my original diagram. I'll use a simple circle with no line through it to represent undifferentiated awareness, or the base. And the addition of the line represents the fold, or the path. And the resulting sense of a you in the world represents the fruit. So here we have undifferentiated awareness. There's the fold. The fold creates the sense of you in the world. With no fold, just undifferentiated awareness. Fold, no undifferentiated awareness, now you have a you and a world. We have undifferentiated awareness disappearing in favor of differentiated awareness, or rather, God, becomes obscured by the rising of you and the world. It's just like movement that can never know stillness, because one cancels the other out. To experience God, we must cancel ourselves out. To cancel yourself out means to transcend, or drop the dualistic perspective of seeing yourself as simply an individual inhabiting an external world, in favor of the non-dual perspective of seeing yourself as undifferentiated awareness. I realized that practicing stillness is tantamount to practicing death. As this realization settled in, it became clear that the true spiritual practice is nothing less than a suicide mission. And that concludes chapter 3. So, thanks a lot, and meet me again next week, and we'll do chapter 4. And chapter 4 is titled The Suicide Mission. Thank you very much.